Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Railway Challenge virtual site visit. My name is Simon Ivnitsky. I'm the chair of the organising committee of the Railway Challenge, so I'd like to welcome you all. I'll just quickly introduce my colleagues who will also be presenting this afternoon. So we've got Bridget Eickhoff. Bridget is the controller of the Railway Challenge. So on the day of the challenge, Bridget's in charge of all of the operations. She's going to describe that and also give us a safety briefing. Then we have Malcolm Dobell. Malcolm is the Deputy Chief Judge, so he's together with the other judges. He is responsible for all the decisions that mean teams get marks or don't get marks. And we've also got Tim Poole here. Tim is the Chief Scrutineer. Scrutineering takes place before the actual challenges start, and of course is equally important because if you don't get through scrutineering, then your locomotive can't enter the challenge. So Tim will explain what that's all about. We've got an hour. We're planning to talk for about 30 or a little bit more minutes, just explaining a few things. We have a video to show you, and then I'm hoping we'll have at least 20 minutes for questions if you have any after that. So hopefully, if that's okay. So we'll make a start then. This is our agenda. I've done the welcome and introductions, and we're now going to have several briefing sessions. I'll start with the first one, which is just sort of a bit of an overview of the competition itself. And to do that, I want to take you, I'm going to take control now, Christine, if that's okay. So I will share my screen, which is basically the Railway Challenge website. So I'm hoping that you're seeing that now. Yes, somebody will tell me if not. And this is if you type Railway Challenge into Google, or you can see the address at the top there. If you find the Railway Challenge pages on the IMechE website, then it'll give you all the information you need. And I'm sure you've all had looked at that quite a lot, but I just want to take you through a few things that you may not be aware of. So first of all, these are the important thing, the team resources here, these different areas on the website. Key dates, you're already aware of those, I'm sure. Information about competing teams and support, there's some funding support available, have a look at that. Then this is important actually, frequently asked questions, we'll probably come back to that afterwards. But any questions that you send in to us through Christina on the Railway Challenge website, any of those questions, they will get sent to the committee and we will provide an answer. We aim to do that really quickly, within a day or so, but the question and the answer are put here then in these frequently asked questions section. So have a look in there. Perhaps before you send any questions, you might find they're already been answered. There are some site plans. Bridget is going to show you some of that today, and Malcolm's going to show a video. But then this is the important one. I just wanted to spend a minute or two on this one, the competition document library. So we'll just click on that and we'll go in. So you'll see there's lots of information in here, but the key thing really is the rules and the technical specification. So if I just quickly open the rules document, and it's a good idea to look at it here because if there are any changes, we will make them here. There's a list at the end of the document of any changes that have been made, so you can see if you've got the latest version of the document. The section at the beginning, there's quite a lot of general information about eligibility, the makeup of the teams, and other kind of sort of general rules. But then the bit that I wanted to come on to is there's a list then of the different challenges. So this is just coming to it. So here, section B, here are all the different challenges and the different amount of points that you get for all of the challenges. You'll see that they're almost all 150, energy storage challenge 300. And now I won't go on to it now, but for each of these challenges, there's a section following in the document about how you get those, how the scoring works and how you get the marks for these. Okay, so that's the first document. It's not a very long document. It's only 11 pages long. Oh no, sorry, it's 32 pages long and I'm on page 11. But not a very long document. You need to be very familiar with that. And the other important one is the technical specification. I won't open that now because we haven't got a huge amount of time. But again, it's a concise document. It gives you lots of information about what you need to consider when you're designing your locomotive. A few other things, there are some drawings that you probably need to be aware of. Drawing of the dynamic loading gauge, a drawing of the wheel set details and a drawing of the drawbar and a few other things in there. Right, that's all that I wanted to say on the sort of introduction to the Railway Challenge and the competition and the overview of the challenges. I will just mention another thing now. You probably would have asked me anyway. Obviously, we're in unusual circumstances now with the COVID pandemic, and we're not. I mean, already today, this has changed because this was going to be a face-to-face site visit. We're still not sure what will happen to the actual competition at the end of June. We're very much hoping that we can go ahead as planned. That's what we're working to at the moment. But of course, we can't be sure of that. I think you know that we've got a date planned at the end of March, 31st of March, when we will make a decision and we will let you know. And at that date, on the 31st of March, we will tell you whether we're going to go ahead with the site, with the competition taking place on the site as planned, or whether we're going to switch to a virtual competition. We're working on an option of a virtual competition. It's not what we'd prefer, but we'll try, if we have to, and we'll tell you at the end of March, we will put on as good a virtual competition as we can, and we'll give you details of that as soon as we can after the 31st of March. Right, I will pause there, stop sharing my screen. If it's okay, we'll take questions at the end, just so we can move through all the different presentations. And I'll hand over now to Bridget. Bridget, you're also going to share your own screen, I think, aren't you? Who will talk initially about the safety briefing. Thank you, Bridget.
I can do that. Find the right one. So. Right, so hopefully you can all see that. And safety, as you will appreciate, is a really important thing for the railway and therefore for the Railway Challenge. And if you look at this, this is a snapshot from the operational safety brief produced by the Friends of the Stapleford Miniature Railway. And it says something very important at the bottom. This is a miniature railway, but you will encounter the same hazards as on the main line. So trains are heavy, they move, they can damage you, they have electricity, bits of them can be hot. There are a number of hazards. So be aware of those. There's the operating railway hazards, and you will get a copy of this booklet, which you can have a look at in due course. But there's also the hazards of what you're doing yourselves, working on your locomotive. So, as many of you will be aware, loading and unloading and jacking up and all of those things your locomotive is actually one of the most hazardous things that you do. So be very aware of that and think about it in advance. Keep an eye out for your colleagues and the other teams. If you see anybody doing anything that looks a bit iffy, please identify it and let us know. And I think that's all I want to say at the moment. Thank you. How do I get out of this? That's a very good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Bridget.
If somebody else shares, does that unshare mine? Because I've lost my little.
I can try, although it's not me next. Okay, we need to hand now over. No, actually, you're going to do. Oh no, Malcolm. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's Malcolm next, I think.
Malcolm, but Malcolm's not sharing his slides. Is that right, Malcolm?
That's right. Yes.
So
I've turned my
Christina,
video on.
could we just go back to the agenda, perhaps? Okay, great. Thank you. So Malcolm Dobell, as I mentioned, is the Deputy Chief Judge, and Malcolm's going to talk about the judging procedure.
So expanding a bit on what Simon's already said about the challenges, there's a team of judges led by past Railway Division Chair Bill Reeve. And in fact, many of the judges are Railway Division past chairs. And although we have to do the judging, we still want to encourage all the teams to do the best, and we will give the benefit of doubt where we can. Bridget's already talked about safety, and we will make sure that any serious lapses of safety might well incur penalties, and gross safety failure might even lead to disqualification from one or more challenges. Sorry, start on a downbeat note like that, but there's some hints and tips for some of the challenges to help you do your best. The design challenge is one of the first things that needs to be submitted. And there are 3 general points I'd make. The locomotives will be complex designs and you will need the space to describe them fully. We've defined the maximum length of the report and the appendices that you can use. And it's no accident that the teams that score the highest marks tend to use the space available. So my hint is, if you think you can make a little bit more space, explaining something more fully, then use it, but don't go above the page count. There's also on the website a useful document called a compliance matrix. You're supposed to use this, and it should be used by you to help ensure that you haven't missed anything, both in the design of your loco and in the report. The idea is that you can go clause by clause with the specification and identify how you've complied with it. The judges will be looking for both completeness, for example, that the location of the accelerometer is marked on a plan, and on the quality of your descriptions, for example, the safety assessments and the conclusions of those assessments. Diagrams need to be explained, and explanations often need to be accompanied by diagrams. This might sound obvious, but is often not done. Critical safety systems need to be clearly explained. And something that has routinely irritated the judge of the design challenge, which has often been me, is it's not always been clear whether the emergency brake is energized to apply or energized to release. And it really does matter. The other document that needs to be submitted in advance is the innovation challenge. And this is just a more than gentle reminder that the innovation challenge is concerning an aspect of the loco's design and not an interesting feature of railway engineering that you might contemplate fitting at some future date. That said, we do understand that you may have aimed to fit an innovation to the locomotive, but in the short time available, you might not have completed. But if there's no evidence that the innovation was ever going to be fitted on the loco, you better have a pretty good story. On the day, don't forget to bring your technical poster challenge with you. Internet connections at Stapleford are challenging, and we don't actually bring any printers with us. We're looking for an A0 printer, so you need a pretty specialised printer to be able to get those done if you've forgotten them. It's very helpful. It helps the judges who've not been intimately involved in the design challenge to understand the locomotive that the teams are offering, and it also helps the teams illustrate their business case challenge. It also helps the spectators who now can understand more about the designs without having to keep asking questions of the teams who usually are busy making their designs work properly. For the business case challenge, where you will do a presentation to a team of judges, our tip is not to have a sole presenter, but equally not to have a whole team of presenters. 2 or 3 is probably a good number. You may bring handouts to the judges, which should amplify the poster perhaps, and allow for the judges' failing eyesight. Also note you'll be timed, and although small infringements won't be cut off, you might be penalised. For the various track-based challenges, I would emphasise a few points. Firstly, maintainability. This involves a number of people working around and possibly under the locomotive while it's not on all its wheels. There are numerous potential hazards, and the judges require sight of your method statement 2 weeks before your arrival at Stapleford. Judging process will also include observing that team members are looking after the safety of themselves and their colleagues. Infringements might incur penalties, and this is one of the challenges where a gross infringement might lead to disqualification. Reliability is desperately important. It's a challenge that runs for the whole weekend. Bridget will be outlining how tight the logistics will be. A lot of emphasis will be on both the Chartered Engineer certificate to demonstrate the locomotive has been successfully operated and your video of the same events. Believe it or not, one team submitted a video of the locomotive back and forth by about half a metre or so. That's really not satisfactory. Unlike other challenges, all teams get 150 points, and if or when you encounter reliability issues, deductions will be made. But take comfort that the scores cannot go below 0. Also stop challenge. Don't assume this is easy. Even full-size railways don't find stopping accurately very easy. Some found that too much braking will stop short. Much too little braking might overrun, but a little too much braking might cause an overrun, contrary to what you might think. And finally, I think the point to make about the energy storage challenge is that it's absolutely crucial that you give us a clear explanation in the design challenge how you know that you will only use the energy recovered during the brake application to move the train. Whatever display you use needs to be visible to the judges, and the accuracy of this method needs to be described and justified in the design of the report. Someone says to us, oh yes, we're going to see that the voltage in the supercapacitor drops by 0.2 of a volt, and that will indicate that we've only used that energy. We might be a little bit dubious, so be aware of that. Both the accuracy and the visibility of the display and actually achieving the struggling with my words, the energy challenge at all has been one of the weakest challenges, and that's why it attracts the highest marks. Finally, when penalties are awarded, we do aim to tell you about the penalties before the final awards ceremony. But in a big competition, we don't want to have lots of people hanging around waiting for the awards. So it might be, if time is tight, we may not advise all the penalties face to face unless it's the penalty makes a difference between winning and losing. That's all I've got to say on this particular subject. Do ask questions afterwards, and I think I'm handing over to Bridget now.
Yep, thank you, Malcolm.
Right, thank you, Malcolm. I shall now share my screen again. So, operations. And what I want to start with is this is a slightly diagrammatic plan of the site. And for those who haven't been there, Malcolm's going to give you a little bit of an overview, and there's a link where you can take a video tour on a train of the whole thing. But just roughly, up the top left there, that's the station. And this is the route that your train will take. Round the curve.
Bridget, I think you need to go on to the next slide. Sorry, it's not showing on my screen anyway.
We're on the title slide.
You're still on the title slide, okay.
We're viewing the slides rather than the full screen, maybe.
Okay. Can you see that? Can you see that now?
We can see that now, yeah. It's still in slide. Okay, great. Full screen, yeah.
Does it build does the arrow appear if I do that?
Yes, there's an arrow by the station at the moment.
There's an arrow by the station. Okay, right, now we're in business. This is the route that the train takes. It's single track railway, through the tunnel, down the hill, over the bridge, around the back, alongside the lake, and then back up the hill again, into the head shunt and back to the station. And once a train has set off from the station, that is what it does. It doesn't go backwards and forwards. It doesn't turn round. It's a one-way loop. So you go down, round the loop at the bottom and back up to the station. And the whole of that takes about 14 minutes, as you will find out if you watch the video on YouTube. So if I now go on to the next slide, has that worked? You get the next slide, it's zoomed in a bit? Right. This is the location for the different challenges, and Malcolm is going to talk you through these when we do the little video tour later. So in terms of timing as you go round, the first one is the auto stop, which is on the way down towards the lake. So there are positions A, B and C on the way down towards the lake, and they will be marked, and that is where the auto stop happens. The next thing sequentially is the ride comfort, which is all the way round that big loop, partly off my picture at the bottom, down to E, which I hope you can see. And that's where the energy, the ride comfort is measured, is round from D to E. And then from E to F to G is the energy storage. So you start from a standing start at E, up to speed, catch the energy however you choose to gather it, stop between F and G, and then see how far you can go. And the final challenge on the way back up the hill is the traction and the noise. And we intentionally do those at the same time, so that you can't cheat the noise challenge by turning the power off, otherwise you lose the traction challenge. So they are intentionally done at the same time. So that's a quick overview of where things happen. The black dotted line on that is the walking route from the station down to the other building at the bottom by B, which is the Haven. And you will get very familiar with that walking route and with the site, and it's a lovely place to be. So let's hope that we can be there in June. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is what actually happens in terms of operations. So this is a rough timetable with arrival and unloading. And as I've already said, safety is #1 priority. So make sure you are prepared. If you're bringing the locomotive in bits in a van, practice. Get the van outside the lab, take it in and out a few times, work out so everybody knows exactly what they're doing for loading and unloading. Just stop moving on. Let's try again. Oh, there we are. Okay. Friday is, first of all, the static scrutineering. So that's have you got the auto stop? Do you fit through the loading gauge? If you pour a bucket of water over it, does it still work? That sort of stuff. Does the horn work? When you've done that, assuming you pass, and Tim will tell you more about scrutineering in a bit, the dynamic scrutineering checks the things that can only be checked by moving. So that is your first opportunity to go round the loop that I've shown you. And maintainability also starts on Friday. The signalling system on the railway may or may not be in use on Friday. On Saturday, you get a practice run, which is yours to do with as you wish. And there you do get a bit of an opportunity to go backwards and forwards and try things, so you can have a second go at the auto stop, for example, as long as you get back to the station within your allotted time. And that's when the business presentation happens. Sunday is when the main track-based challenges happen. And on that day, the signals will be in use. So obeying signals is obviously critical. And failure to obey signals could well result in disqualification, not just in penalties. It's a very serious offence, is not following the signals. And there are also other trains running for spectators, assuming that we're allowed any by the time we get to June. And then the surprise giving, the clearing up, and the going home. And Malcolm, I think it was, or Simon mentioned earlier, this is a complex exercise. So what I'm showing you now is a selection of the planning from 2019, where we also had 12 teams. And my reason for showing that is it gives you an idea of how the whole thing fits together, which is why, as Malcolm said, reliability is absolutely key. If a team's not ready, we don't have space to stick them in later on. There isn't a lot of spare space in this timetable. So please be aware of that and do your best to be ready when we ask you to be, but do also enjoy yourselves. So I think I now hand over to Tim to talk about the scrutineering. Is that right, Simon?
I think so, Bridget. Yes. So Tim Poole has been patiently waiting. Tim is our chief scrutineer, and there he is. Over to you, Tim. Tell us about scrutineering.
Good afternoon, all the people from the teams. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if you can see me or just a dot, but my name's Tim and I am the chief scrutineer on the day. The reason for that is that I'm the author of the technical specification. So if you have any queries on that, of course, please don't hesitate to ask during the questions and answer session. The scrutineering basically aims to do as much as we can in terms of checking that the locomotives are compliant clause by clause on the day. Now, there are many aspects of the design that can only be assessed by the judges, as Malcolm has mentioned earlier, but we do as many checks as we can on the day. The reason for this is twofold. Why do we check the locos? First of all, safety. Most of the checks we do are safety related. We're looking for sharp corners, we're looking for entrapments, we're looking for all the other safety features, correct labelling, correct hazard warning, correct brake operation. The other reason, of course, is we want a level playing field. We want it to be perfectly fair. The scrutineering is divided into 3 sections. First of all, the locos are off. We will inspect everything we can with the locomotives off. Next, we turn the locomotives on and do whatever tests we can with the locomotives running up in the station. And then, as Bridget mentioned earlier, we do the dynamic scrutineering, which is taking the loco onto the track. And this is your first chance really to use the locomotive in anger. So it's a good thing to take it on a long run on the day to check it's all assembled correctly. Obviously, this is a very crucial moment for you. As Bridget has just shown you, this is something that is done in line with a fairly complicated timetable that is highly damaged if locomotives aren't ready on their slot. We will try and scrutinize the locomotives in the correct order so that you're ready to do the dynamic scrutineering in the correct order. And it's really crucial that your locomotive is reliable, because missing those slots, those dynamic scrutineering slots, is a penalty activity. Will incur a penalty. The dynamic scrutineering will be down on the track, and obviously it'll be looking at things like brake rates and responses to controls. Now, the technical specification doesn't have any gratuitous items in. Every single part of the tech spec is actually a cut down version of a specification for a real locomotive, which was in fact the works locomotives for the Jubilee Line extension. And the specification, as you're gradually now working with it, you will notice is a performance specification. In other words, we haven't designed anything, we've just said what we want the locomotive to do. That is an option. Historically, the railways used to design and get builders to build to their designs. But now the way of the world is that most rolling stock is built according to performance specifications, which does, of course, give you a completely free rein on how you achieve that performance. Does mean you need to understand the locomotive you built. So one of the things I will say, and I said it in the October briefing to the teams on how to get your locomotive reliable, is please make sure before you come to site and assemble your loco, you really understand how it works. If you are a new team, bizarrely, you actually have the advantage here. We've often had new teams winning because when the locomotive doesn't work on the day, they know how it's supposed to work. They can have a reasonable shot at putting it right. If you are a team bringing along a locomotive from the previous year and it doesn't work on the day, if you don't know how it was designed, it wasn't written up, it wasn't your design, you do actually stand much less of a chance of getting anything working. So really, please do make sure you understand the locomotive, because if it doesn't work for scrutineering, then there will be penalties incurred if you can't do the dynamic scrutineering. You may not be able to run at all if you can't demonstrate various features. There will be some things on the scrutineering that will be showstoppers, any sort of entrapment issues, like unguarded flat belts, where if you've got your hand in those, all fingers removed. These are sort of life-changing injuries, and obviously this sort of thing will stop the locomotive running. So please do have a look at the scrutineering sheet, which is a part of the website that Simon talked about earlier. Have a look very carefully at what will be checked on the day, and print the sheet out. Imagine you're scrutinizing the locomotive yourself, and that you would be able to tick everything off. So do have a go at that. Certainly recommend that. The other thing I'll say on the day is please do make sure that your team members are around as well. Sometimes we've found a locomotive just sitting there waiting, and there's no one there to show us. Obviously, for the scrutineering, we do need you to be there, so make sure you're there. Now, Christina has put up on the screen what the check sheet looks like, and you can see, now we've got it up on the screen, the colour coding. So basically, this means that the checks we make are categorized into safety, labeling, performance, etc., etc. And when all the categories are finished, you'll receive a sort of license disc made up of segments of all of those colors: the dark red, the light red, the dark blue, the light blue, dark green, the light green. And so what you're aiming for is that you have a complete circle of segments, meaning you have passed all the categories of scrutinizing. And so you better watch your fellow teams as they gradually fill up their circle. So that is the aim of scrutineering. If you have any queries on the technical specification, then obviously we will be around after this presentation, after the agenda, for questions and answers. If you have any other questions later on, some teams have already written to us, then please carry on doing that. I should point out that when you do write questions to us about the tech spec, what we do is publish the question and publish the answer so that all teams can see the question and see the answers. Again, that's all part of keeping it fair. If anyone has any queries, I'll still be here during the Q&A. Thanks, Simon.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Tim. So that's the end of our presentations. We're just a couple of minutes behind schedule. So the plan now is that I'm going to hand over to Malcolm, and Malcolm is going to take us on a virtual site visit, I think. But while he's doing that, maybe it's a good opportunity. If you have any questions, please think about them. Please, you can type them into the chat area and we'll go through those, or I will open up for questions so that you can ask questions later. I think we can unmute afterwards and you'll be able to ask questions personally. So please think about your questions. Okay, Malcolm, do you need to share the screen now, I think?
Hopefully that's working.
Yep, seems to be, yes.
Yep. Okay, so what I've got is a 4-minute video extracted from a 16-minute video that Stapleford Railway kindly compiled for us, based on a complete round trip. It's not absolutely perfect, but that complete video will be made available to you by Christina later. But I didn't want to take us through 16 minutes of video. It's fun on the train. It's not in a video. Now, what we've got here is the station, and the area around the level crossing is where the maintainability challenge will take place. But this whole area is effectively home for all the locomotives during the 3 days. I'm going to move on and let the video play now. So as I say, this is the station. You'll deliver onto that hard standing. There's undercover space here for people to work on the locomotives. And we set off the first part of the railway as Bridget described. So this is going to go exactly as Bridget described, and I'll highlight each of the test locations as we pass them. On the right, you'll see the head shunt you'll go into at the end of the trip, so that you come back in the same direction as you started. Into the tunnel. And as we set off, come out of the tunnel, we go down a comparatively steep gradient, approximately 1 in 80, when you need to watch your speed. We're coming up now to the auto stop challenge. You'd stop here, make sure that you then accelerate to speed, hit your beacon, and then come to a controlled stop. You'll see the haven on the left where many of the spectators will be working. And we're just coming up to the first stop where the ride challenge will take place, at least will start. We're coming onto the bridge, which is just to the left of the signal. And we'll stop here, won't in this video, but we'll stop here and the instrumentation fitted, and that's the bridge where you stop. We've now gone pretty much all the way around the loop. We're coming up to what's known as Spillway Bridge, and we're just about, that's where you stop there for the energy challenge. Accelerate up to speed, and then brake to a stop somewhere near this tree that overhangs the lake. Once you stop, you just use recovered energy, see how far you can travel down the straight section towards the haven. Once the energy challenge is finished, you carry on moving around and on the slat bit for approaching the 180 gradient. Challenge is on the 180 gradient, where certainly we've seen teams before now, just beyond this gate where the challenge takes place, and you see an overhead view of that location, which unfortunately the one bit of the video that Richard didn't put in. And we're making our way back to the station, through the tunnel, and round into the head shunt, which is effectively 3 sides of the triangle, so you'll be able to get the train into the same way round. And then you will back very slowly under the instructions of the guard into the station. And Simon, I think we're pretty much at the end of this bit. So I'll stop sharing and hand back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Malcolm. So I hope that gave everybody at least a sort of a feeling for what the railway is like and what the different locations are for where the challenges take place. Okay, so we're now into the question and answer session. So I haven't seen any questions appear in the chat area, so please put them in if you want to. But I think now if you have a question, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask a question. Perhaps if you could just say which team you're from, that would be nice. So does anyone have a question for any of us?
Yes, good afternoon, Simon. It's Simon Martin from Network Rail. Thank you
Simon.
all for putting this together. It's very much appreciated. And obviously, I was part of the challenge last year, which was virtual. I understand the reasons for obviously potentially going virtual. Is there no potential at all for delaying the competition by around a month if it were to suit all of the teams and the operation of the railway?
Thanks, Simon, and thanks to Network Rail for the support. It's a very good question, and we did discuss that at our last meeting. And it's not completely out of the question. We will decide that as it comes up to the end of March. The problem with delaying, though, is lots of the teams are university teams, and if we delay it, it sort of moves out of the university period into the summer. May be a problem for some of the university teams. I don't know. But we haven't ruled it out. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add anything to that.
Perhaps that's something where we can ask the university teams to consider it and let us know what their views are.
Yep. I think Christina did ask them to make some comments on some things, but perhaps it wasn't exactly that question. So, all right, we'll certainly consider it. But thanks for the question, Simon. I'm sorry I can't give a sort of more definite answer.
No problem, thank you.
Right, any other questions? I can see there's a hand, unless that
Hi there.
William.
It's Will here from the Bombardier team. Would you be able to tell us what a virtual competition would consist of if we were to go down that route, please?
All right, I'll give it a try. I mean, last year we didn't have as much time to plan anything, so effectively what we did was we just ran the sort of business case type challenges. So teams made a presentation. We're hoping, if we have to do a virtual competition this year, to do something much more interesting and exciting. It won't, of course, be quite the same as if we can all go there and physically sort of work on the locomotives and all that sort of thing that we really want to do. But we can look to the Formula Student competition, because they're sort of a step ahead of us on this, and they actually ran more of a virtual competition last year. What they did, and this we can't do exactly the same, but they had, for example, a driver simulator software where they could drive a vehicle and the teams took turns in driving it. And they've also done some sort of simulation work on how the vehicles would run on the track. To some extent, it's a bit easier for a road vehicle than it is for a railway vehicle, but that's the sort of thing that we're going to consider. We've actually got a workshop coming up very soon, I think maybe next week, where we're going to get together as a committee and consider what we might be able to include along those sort of lines. I know Malcolm made a suggestion of a sort of, not that we're going to be doing this necessarily, but just for things to think about, a simulation of the braking challenge where you have to stop in a certain point. So it may be that you can simulate how the vehicle brakes and show us the results of that simulation. So that sort of thing, William. Again, I'm just going to go to colleagues. Does anybody want to add? No. So again, I can't really give you a full answer, but those are the sort of things we're thinking about, William. And actually, if anybody has any suggestions, we'd be very keen to hear them. Can somebody remind me when our workshop is, just so people know to send comments before? Oh, is it tomorrow?
Yes.
It's tomorrow, Simon.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if anybody could send us comments by tomorrow morning, please, that would be very helpful. If you have a brilliant idea as to what we might do in terms of a simulation or that sort of thing to make a virtual event more exciting. Does that answer your question, William?
Yeah, thank you, Simon.
Thanks very much. I don't see any hands up, and I don't think there are any comments in the chat. Oh yes, there is one. Is there? Okay, thanks. So it's from Daniel Carbonell. Thanks for the presentation, Daniel from Team Lens. Do you know the width of each section of rail where the traction challenge takes place? Daniel, by width, do you mean the length of the section?
No, I mean the width of each individual rail. So
the section of the rail or the gauge of the track?
So not the gauge and not the length, but each, like the width of each individual piece of track. So we think it should be like around 30 to 40 mil, but we're not sure.
I'm sure we can get the rail profile for you.
The rail section is that not included in the specs somewhere? It is a standard rail section for such a railway, but we can certainly get the information.
Is that Daniel's question though? You mentioned do you mean this cross section of the rail itself?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Let me just check. We've got a few drawings. Yeah, it's not really. There's the loading gauge drawing.
We can certainly feed that in as a frequently asked question and get the information from the railway of what the rail section is. It's a standard rail section for such a railway. But
it changes in different in different places around the track, isn't it, Bridget?
It's fairly consistent, but they will know what they have on the different parts. And if it's the traction challenge in particular, then we can find out what it is on that section.
Yeah, we can find it. That's probably fairly standard there. So Daniel, if you send that question in to Christina, we'll get an answer to you and everybody else.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? No, everything must have been very clear. Rory's put his hand up. Rory from Network Rail.
Hi, yes, so Rory from Network Rail. A question occurred to me earlier, it may be in the documents, but in terms of the innovation challenge, are you looking more for, say, one significant innovation, or can it be a multitude of small innovations or micro innovations on a locomotive?
I think Malcolm's best place to answer that. I'm quickly looking at the rules as perhaps Malcolm will step in.
I think they're unclear. I think it just talks about innovation. And as we know, in the railway industry itself, innovation is a pretty undefined term. It means precisely what the speaker wants it to mean. I think you need that.
I suspect that if you could make a case that your select set of mini innovations had a significant combined effect, then that would be innovative, wouldn't it?
I'm pretty sure we've had examples where there's been more than one, like a couple of innovations in the past, hasn't there, Malcolm?
Certainly, and there've also been, I have to say, innovations that have never been anywhere near the locomotive, but that's another matter entirely.
Yeah, Malcolm's already made that point. It should be an innovation that is actually on your locomotive, please. I can't find anything in the rules that's more specific. So sorry, Rory, we can't exactly answer that.
That's all right, that's fine, thank you.
It does say a novel and innovative aspect incorporated into the locomotive. It doesn't exclude it being more than one individual mini innovation, as Bridget says.
I think that could be worth addressing, I suppose, in future. I don't know how teams either succeed or struggle with this, but if you're, because innovations can be very, you can use a different kind of bolt, can't you, that makes certain aspects of maintenance a lot more interesting, but using a different bolt doesn't really feel like it warrants an article written on it on innovation challenges necessarily. Whereas I know in the past, I think Birmingham Uni did silicon carbide, used silicon carbide power electronics, and that feels like one big innovation. But that's, if you're picking up ideas like that, you can kind of run out of ideas after, say, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
I guess, but yeah. All right, thank you. All
right, thanks. Thanks, Rory. Yeah, I was just quickly, we could just have a quick look if you like. This is the scoring for the innovation. So there's perhaps a few hints in there, how the innovation can contribute to the industry's railway technical strategy. Perhaps a little bit out of date. Is it the 4 C's? The potential of the innovation to introduce significant change in the industry, the novelty, and the presentation of the structure. Okay, we'll have a little review of that, I think, Rory. Thank you for the question.
The key things there are the potential to introduce significant change and the novelty.
Yeah.
Whether it's a combination of small things which together achieve something, or one big thing that achieves something, it's the potential and what it achieves and the novelty.
And I have to say, things like hard lock nuts have absolutely transformed some of the fixings and fastenings around points and crossings.
Good. Okay, some useful comments there. Thank you for the question, Rory. Okay, let me go back. I don't think we've got any other questions. So, okay, if there are no other questions, unless anybody wants to make any final comments, Bridget?
No, thank you.
Malcolm?
No, thank you, Simon.
Tim?
Just one other thing, Simon, actually think about loading and unloading. You're working effectively to a 5th scale locomotive, which in real life would be typically 90 tons. So you're talking about something 125 times lighter, which gives you probably 3/4 of a ton. You're not going to be lifting it off your vehicle safely in one piece in most cases, unless you have a very specialist vehicle. Think about how you're going to get it loaded and unloaded safely. Think about how you are going to reliably and quickly assemble the various pieces, in particular, what kind of connectors you're going to use. And I would suggest you do not rely on lots of individual connections and individual bits of wire. So you will need to think carefully about the cost and efficiency of whatever connection system you use to reassemble the modules. This is quite a crucial thing where people have come unstuck. So really think about how are you going to break it down, how are you going to load it and unload it to the satisfaction of the stewards who will be there on the day. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, well, Christina, did you want to add anything or not?
No, thank you, Simon. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you, Christina. And just, of course, everybody keep in touch with Christina. We will get a message to you at the end of March as to whether we're virtual or real. Hopefully it's real, actually going to Stapleford on the day. Look forward to meeting lots of you then. And as Christina says, good luck to everybody. So thank you very much. Thank you, Bridget, Malcolm, Tim, Christina, and thanks everybody for participating. This has been recorded, so if you've missed any of it and want to watch it again or want to pass it to other people, Christina will give the information later.